The USS Ronald Reagon's air wing is known as Carrier Air Wing 14. It provides the American military with mobile firepower and surveillance. Now let's go behind the scenes to take a closer look at the pilots who fly these planes. Out here, airborne operations take center stage, and the F-18 aviators are the stars of the show.
Every flight we do here, we know we're going to do something exciting because we take off and land on the carrier.
On board the carrier, the air wing includes 7 squadrons of more than 60 planes and nearly 2,000 sailors. Most crew are in support roles. Only 100 are pilots, separated into tightly knit squadrons of 10 to 15.
Typical pilot in the air wing who flies these F-18s, for example, it's going to be a lieutenant, mid to late 20s, maybe 30 years old at the most. They've earned the right to fly jets off this aircraft, spending a couple of years in flight school to get their wings, and then we demand a lot of them when we're out here.
On the Reagan's current 3-month deployment in the Pacific Ocean, every one of the 60 F-18 pilots flies a daylight or nighttime mission nearly every day. A single training mission lasts about an hour, but a real combat mission can last an exhausting 8 hours.
Hopefully we'll stop flying at night here in a few days, which will be a relief for us all. But it's a pretty long day, it really is.
A naval aviator's typical day starts with flight planning and a mission brief in the ready room.
Final rendezvous will be in the combat spread, and I'll talk about the fence out in a minute.
Today, Lieutenant George DeGennaro, call sign Waldo, is briefing his flying partner, Commander Jeffrey Winter, call sign Chili, on their upcoming training mission. During these briefings, pilots rely heavily on military acronyms.
Primary mission is to go out and execute 1v1 high-aspect BFM alternate mission, possibly DCA.
A 1v1 high-aspect BFM is a one-on-one basic fighter maneuver, or in-air dogfight between 2 F-18 Hornets.
Hard deck will be 5K soft deck.
This briefing also prepares both pilots for the mission, its location and airspace boundaries, and the weapon and fuel requirements.
Very similar to when a coach comes up with a game plan for a football team right before a game. He says, hey, this is what we want to do. You know, granted, there's a million different possibilities as to what might actually happen, but this is our going-in game plan. This is how we're going to attack this adversary.
After the brief, Lieutenant DeGennaro and Commander Winter head to a nearby paraloft, their dressing room, to suit up for flight. One critical piece of equipment is the G-suit. During dynamic flight maneuvers, it slows the drain of blood from the brain and extremities, thus preventing a blackout.
This is the anti-G suit worn by our pilots. That's the first piece of gear they put on. The second piece of gear they put on is the torso harness. Then after that, they'll put on their survival vest. It's just like a regular vest, zips up in the front. Oxygen mask so they can breathe. The gear weighs about 25-30 pounds that they wear every day.
Together, their flight gear, including G-suit, survival vest, oxygen mask and helmet, is worth more than $6,000. Up on the flight deck, Lieutenant DeGennaro follows a strict set of launch procedures. The brown shirt plane captain turns the F-18 over to him, and he checks that all tools from the plane's pre-flight maintenance review are accounted for. A final walk around, then he climbs into the cockpit. Pry-fly gives the go-ahead, and the plane's ready to launch. When the pilot and the plane are prepped and ready, they taxi into position. Hand signals from the yellow and green shirt crew guides the plane's front wheel, its nose gear up to the catapult, and a holdback bar holds the plane in place until launch. pilot grabs a handle called the towel rack and hangs on tight for the launch.
I think it's a lot like being at the apex of the hill on a roller coaster right before you go down. It's the best flight you'll ever get in your life. All you're thinking about is, okay, is this catapult going to work today?
Up in the air, the team of F-18 pilots completes their mission. Training missions like dogfighting and bombing runs are designed to simulate actual combat.
500 out of turn, taking just 2.
And on this Pacific Ocean deployment, missions have very real-world implications.
Just working near Korea and North Korea. If we overfly some of those boundaries, you know, we'll hear about on CNN next morning.
The Super Hornet is a reliable fighter jet with a combat range of over 2,300 kilometers. But on longer missions, they'll often require a refuel from a specially configured tanker, usually another Super Hornet. During a mid-air refueling, the tanker extends a hose and basket, and the pilot below must carefully link in with a retractable fuel probe. It takes about 10 minutes for a refill, and pilots must hold their positions tightly. A torn hose could spray fuel onto his jet and impair his visibility. When the mission's complete, Lieutenant DiGennaro circles back to the carrier.
Little low start.
The go-ahead from the landing signal officer tells him to bring the plane in for a landing. It's no simple feat. DiGennaro's maneuvers must be exact as he guides the speeding plane towards the flight deck. To stop, he must hook a wire on a runway about 245 meters long. It's an easy process for him now, but he still remembers his first carrier flight and landing.
It's something I really couldn't even describe, but it's a very interesting feeling. It's the coolest thing I will ever do in my life.
Lieutenant DiGennaro taxis the plane into a parking spot and turns it back over to the plane captain. He and his partner then head back to the ready room to debrief the results of the last flight and begin planning the next.
Left or right?
There's really no oblique nature of my turn at all.
Pretty much
I check 025 and go straight up through the bullseye.
Flying a daytime mission requires concentration and focus. But when the sun goes down, pilots face the most challenging aspect of naval aviation: night flight.
It's something that a lot of people never really get used to. I don't think the Wright brothers would have invented an airplane if they had flying at night in mind, especially off of an aircraft carrier. It's not something that's necessarily fun, but it will get your heart beating.
Many combat missions are flown under cover of darkness, so aviators must also train this way. Yet at night, no horizon is visible, and pilots can easily lose a sense of their surrounding space.
On an exceptionally dark night, which we'll have when there's no moon or when there's weather above us blocking out the moon and the stars, it can be very disorienting.
One piece of equipment that helps out: night vision goggles.
These are the night vision goggles, a nice small lightweight piece of gear so it doesn't hurt too much or it doesn't strain your neck too much when you're flying with them at night. Gives us the opportunity to see the horizon, see other airplanes, see things on the ground out at range. These are not binoculars in any sense. All they're doing is amplifying the ambient light that is out there.
During a landing, pilots shift their focus to the meatball, a moving amber light on the flight deck's instrument display. It moves up and down to indicate vertical angle of approach to the runway. Pilots count on the meatball to guide them safely in, yet they often don't realize how close they are to the carrier. And the touchdown can be a jarring surprise.
It can go south very quickly when you're landing on the carrier at night. You just revert to your training and don't think about it. If you think about it, you're going to be dead.
If a pilot's glide slope is incorrect by even a small margin, he could strike the back of the carrier, as this F-18 did on the Regon in January 2006. The pilot ejected safely, but the plane was lost in the ocean. Still, despite the ever-present danger, these naval aviators are well trained, and they rely on their years of experience to fly and land safely.
You gotta kind of stay relaxed and stay focused on what you're doing and not think too hard about what you're gonna do.
For the men and women of the Regon's Air Wing, it comes down to a passion for flying these high-tech toys.
It's a pretty difficult job, but it's probably one of the most rewarding. It's awesome to fly on and off the boat. It's the greatest job out here. It's pretty sweet.
The USS Ronald Regon has dozens of highly trained pilots flying the Navy's most versatile strike fighter, the F-18. These powerful planes require explosive weaponry to complete their missions, so the Regon is packed to the gills with 4.5 million kilograms of ordnance. The F-18 Super Hornet carries up to 11 pieces of ordnance on every flight, attached to the hooks on the wings or body of the plane. Some weapons are guided by GPS, radar or heat-seeking infrared, like the Sidewinder missile. Others are simply dumb bombs, heavy unguided explosives weighing between 225 and 900 kilograms. And then there's the Hornet's powerful gun, a 20mm cannon that shoots 6,000 rounds per minute. Every piece of the ship's ordnance is kept on one of 34 storage units called magazines. Flight preparation begins in a well-protected assembly room deep inside the carrier, 5 decks below the waterline. Here, unarmed weapons are assembled for combat by a well-trained crew of ordnance handlers, known as the G3 Division.
They're trained as a cohesive unit, and through that training, that's how we become more proficient in handling weapons.
The crew is preparing a 225-kilogram Mark 80 series unguided dumb bomb. On the bomb's back end, an aerodynamic fin is attached. It'll help the bomb fly more accurately to its target. At the same time, a nose plug is installed on the front end to give the bomb greater target penetration. The crew adds a safety switch and inspects the bomb. A pneumatic hoist moves it from the assembly table to a skid for transport to the flight deck. This well-trained crew is efficient, completing the ordnance assembly in about a minute. One of the ship's 9 ordnance elevators brings the bomb to a staging area, or bomb farm, located on the flight deck's starboard side.
Inspect lugs and fin for alignment, security.
After one last inspection, the G3s hand custody of the bomb to the squadron's own ordnance crew. They'll load the weapon onto an F-18. There's no room on the flight deck for pneumatic hoists, so this 6-person team must lift the bomb by hand and carefully lock it into place on the F-18's wing. For leverage, they use metal poles, nicknamed hernia bars.
Bring it up! Forward! Forward, straight up! Left forward! Lock down, take it! Hook support weapons, swipe right, shit it inboard! Up forward!
Finally, the bomb is safely locked and tightened into place. At this stage, with the dumb bomb tightly attached to the plane, the crew can arm it for combat with an exploding fuse. Moving ordnance is a precision operation that's never rushed. A single missed step could lead to a crew member injury or an unplanned flight deck detonation. Disasters that are extremely rare, yet catastrophic when they occur.